Hello everybody, it's Richie here with a thread video. There was a thread going around this year, the 50 record challenge. I didn't make a video to that because it would have been a bullshit video. I've literally been listening to hundreds of records that I haven't heard in a long time, and the reason being is I wanted to determine what to get rid of, what to keep, because I'm running out of room. I don't want my record collection to keep growing and growing to where I have records in every room except the bathroom. I don't want to be that guy. I have plenty of records right here, and I'm going to keep it to this amount, That's what I say now. I listened to a lot of good records, and I got rid of some good records. I got rid of Tears for Fears, Sitting in a Big Chair, or whatever. The one with Shout, Shout, Da 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 Da. You know what I'm talking about. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I hadn't listened to that album in 30 odd years. And I asked myself, am I going to want to listen to that in the next 20? And the answer is no. So it's gone. Now when I'm 85 and I get a craving for that 80s synth pop, I may regret it, but I seriously doubt it. Now here's one, Delaney and Bonnie and Friends on tour with Eric Clapton. This is one I mean, if I wouldn't have listened to these records and I just pulled out on assumptions, I would have kept the Tears for Fears and I would have got rid of this one. But this is a really good album. Surprisingly, Even with Eric Clapton, Dave Mason's on here. Really good lineup. And I really enjoyed this album. But the video I am going to make is albums that I thought were crap, but I love now. The first time I heard them, I thought, man, this is not very good. But I love them now. Perfect example is the Velvet Underground's first album. The one with the banana on there, the Andy Warhol. Velvet Underground and Nico. When I first heard that, this is horrible. And I was not alone in that sentiment. Nobody liked that album. I mean, honestly, nobody liked that record. When that record came out, I bet you less than 1,000 people actually really liked that record. It flopped. It's an iconic album now. I don't have it on vinyl, so I can't show it in this video. I have the CD. It's good enough for me. I don't need to buy a reissue of it. I saw an original in Bakersfield recently, and it was in the hundreds, and that's fine, The CD do me just fine. Another one was Sweetheart at the Rodeo. I didn't like that record when it came out. There are some people now that claim that's their favorite Byrds album, and that's fine. I'm not disputing that. But probably those people aren't really big Byrds fans. I'm a big Byrds fan. They're my fourth favorite band from the 60s, following the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix Experience, Byrds. That album, it was Graham Parsons came in and they went in a totally country direction, and I did not like it. And for the most part, nobody else liked it either. It flopped. The Byrds' career took a nosedive, and that's why to this day I do not like Graham Parsons. I don't have any of his records, and that son of a bitch, I don't know. He ruined the Byrds, He ruined their career. They made great albums after that. In fact, the following one, Dr. Bird and Mr. Hyde, or whatever it's called, I think it's a much better album. It's got country and it's got psych and it's all mixed together, and I think it works a lot better. But we're going to show the records I do have. First one here, Are You Experienced? The Jimi Hendrix Experience. First time I heard this, I was in 6th grade. My friend Mark Margrave brought it over, listened to it, he put it on, and this guy can't even sing. Those were my exact words. I remember it to this day. Probably 6 months later, it was less than a year, I love the guy, By 1970, I had all of his records. But yeah, can't even sing. You know, that was my first impression. Now I don't have the U.S. version. The U.S. cover's way better than this, man. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the U.S. version has a slight different song selection. So I need to get that. Now the next one is this one. Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, Deja Vu. Now I distinctly remember going to my friend's, Mike Holdsworth's house. And he put this on. And I told him, man, what is it? The first song is Carry On. Carry On. I go, man, this sounds like choir music. I remember to this day, that was my first reaction to this album. I love it now. I actually heard this one before I heard this one. And I love them both now. To me, they're kind of inconsistent albums. They don't flow real good. I mean, the songs, and what's weird is the songs that I really loved upon first listen, those are still my favorites. And like Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, I love that song. The next one, Marrakesh Express, I didn't like that song. I like it now. I did not like it back then. But even though I like it now, it's one of my least favorites. And then you have the David Crosby, Genevieve or whatever. That was slow and drawn out, and I thought it was boring. Pre-Road Downs, that was probably the first and last song were my two favorites. You Don't Have to Cry, good song. It wasn't what I was into at the time. Wooden Ships, I love that song. Long Time Gone, I love that song. Those are my two favorites. They probably still are. Helplessly Hoping, I like now. But it's kind of those two albums are kind of inconsistent. You know, it's not a good flow. They're good albums, but it's not a real good flow. The next one, man, I couldn't stand this band. The New York Dolls. This is their debut. The first time I saw these guys was on Don Kirshner's rock concert. And I'm watching them and I'm thinking, who's this guy? You know, this Mick Jagger ripoff, you know? Love them now. I didn't really get into this band until probably the 80s, you know? Give them a re-listen. I go, man, these guys are great. But yeah, back in the 70s, man, I did not like this. And not too many people did. They didn't do very well. They have a double album out. It's called Hard Night's Day. It's them doing demo sessions in a studio. They just ran through their whole set. And it's really good. I want to get that record. Now, another record that I did not like, I do not have it. And it kind of blows me away that I don't have it on vinyl, is Diamond Dogs. I remember buying that album when it first came out, and I returned it. To me, it wasn't it was real raw, and I wasn't used to that. I mean, I love it now. It's a victim of my divorce, and I still haven't replaced it, you know, surprisingly. I will probably get the reissue. The reissues sound really good. Probably better than the originals. The next album, though, it's not so much that I didn't like it when it first came out. To me, it was the same album as the first. I bought the first Ramones album shortly after it came out, and I loved it. I remember playing it for my friends, and it was like, people now, it sounds like pop music, you know, people even call it. I mean, it came out, and it was not considered pop music. It was pretty abrasive sounding compared to what was being played on the radio. I bought this one, and like I said, it's not that I didn't like it. To me, it was the same album, and it is. And I returned it. Back then, you could exchange your record, and, you know, it's got a flaw, and then they would say, oh, yeah, get another one. And I would make sure there weren't any other ones, you know. Now we get something else. The next one, another one I returned. Germs, GI. Bought this when it first came out. The week it came out. And man, it was just... This is the first American hardcore album. And it is really abrasive. It's one of my favorite albums now. I listen to this all the time. And especially side one, it just flows. It's a great album. But the first time I heard it, it was kind of too much. It was less than a month later, I went back and bought it though. And I'm so glad I did. Fantastic album. Now this next one is a pretty recent purchase. And it's Sandinista by The Clash. Now, it wasn't that I hated this album. I just didn't think it was as good as their previous ones when it first came out. And I recently bought this, and I love this. In fact, this is the Clash album that I've been listening to the most lately. And I really dig it. It's got some songs on it that are throwaways. But it's a 3-record set. And it's just got a handful of songs that aren't that good. But the rest, I think, I love it. What can I say? Now, I got one more here. I bought... This record came out in 1970. And I had no interest in buying it back then. I bought a CD of it in the 80s. And it was the Charles Manson album, Lie. It had the cover of Life magazine, and instead of Life, they had LIE on there. I bought the CD, and it was horrible. I didn't think it sounded very good at all. But I recently bought this one because Deadwax 66 was playing it in the background of one of his live streams. And I was like, man, it actually sounds pretty good, you know? And I don't know if it's because it's on vinyl as opposed to the CD just brought out the flaws. And I have listened to the CD since buying this, and this does sound better than the CD. All those other ones I think are great albums. This one I don't think is a great album, but it's an album that I thought was a total piece of crap. And I actually like it now. Now, the dude's a piece of crap, and he died in Bakersfield, California, of all places. Fuck. That's it. Records that initially I thought were crap, and I love them now. Make a response. I order you. Take care. Take care, everybody. Have a good Memorial Day weekend.